As President Trump prepares to take the stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos, one issue already in the global spotlight is Greenland and America's role in the Arctic. The White House threatening tariffs on European countries opposing U.S. control of Greenland, which Trump has said is crucial for global security and survival. Joining us this morning to discuss is retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, a national security expert and former Pentagon strategist. Good morning to you, Lieutenant Colonel. Great to have you on with us this morning.
Good morning, Jan.
All right, let's start with the big picture. In plain terms, why does Greenland matter so much to U.S. security right now?
Well, the national security strategy the president published last month basically talks about a 21st century Monroe doctrine that has much more to do with actual security from the northern flank than it does in the southern flank. We took, Maduro and put Venezuela on the map here recently because of, in part because of the Chinese influence, the Iranian influence. Well, to the north, we've long had a problem with access to our front door, basically through the Arctic, because old Soviet bombers and missiles could easily access, across the pole. And so we have to have an early warning mechanism up there. And Greenland is an integral part of that open door policy that we have to, shut. And so the president is resilient on this. He's not going to go back. He's going to stick to his guns on this issue. And we have to make it very clear to our allies and adversaries alike.
And this isn't just about missiles and radars anymore. We know the Arctic itself is changing. You even wrote in your article that Arctic shipping routes are no longer really hypothetical. Russia, we know, is militarizing them. China has been positioning itself for long-term control. Talk about what's happening right now. What are our adversaries doing in the Arctic? How concerned should we be?
Well, I spent many years in the Arctic, especially facing the Cold War, Russians, the Soviet Union, and they had massive bases. Well, they've reconstructed those bases, air bases and the like. The Chinese, interestingly, which is not an Arctic nation, has started to put together ports and infrastructure. They've even mapped the floor of the Arctic region. So the Chinese are very insistent upon having access and using that, in a very large geographic area along with the Russians. And so there will be a vacuum created if we allow that to be occupied by the Russians and the Chinese. We have to, really answer that in part, not just from Alaska, but also from Greenland and northern Canada. Otherwise, we're incredibly vulnerable.
And another part of this, speaking of China, that often gets overlooked is the critical rare earth minerals that Greenland has right now, currently dominated, we know, by China. So how big of a vulnerability is that, and how does Greenland factor into reducing that dependence?
Well, your iPhone, sophisticated weapons, all this high-tech stuff we put in outer space depends upon, to a large degree, on rare earth minerals. And, the Chinese dominate the world's market. They not only mine it, but they process it and they sell it to us. And so to have access, much like Eastern Ukraine, to rare earth minerals, we need Greenland. Greenland has not only rare earth, but also uranium, which of course we're becoming more dependent upon for nuclear reactors. And so it's absolutely essential, strategically essential, that we not necessarily own Greenland, but we leverage it against the Chinese. Otherwise, we become far more dependent upon Beijing than we ought to be.
And like you said before, when you talk about uranium and enriching uranium, you don't want your adversaries being able to get their hands on that as well. World leaders are going to be closely watching for signals about American intent today. How would you advise the president? What message should he be sending to allies, to adversaries, and the American public all at once when he speaks about this?
Well, when he talks about this is about security and access, we need to cooperate with our allies. And at the same time, the president needs to tell the Chinese and the Russians that we're not going to give you a back door to North America. You're going to pay a heavy price if you insist upon that. And then to the American public. This is not another war in Afghanistan or Iraq. It's about having early warning to very serious threats across our polar regions to the north. And so I would hope that agreement and not just pressure would come out of the World Economic Forum this morning.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your time and for your insight with us this morning.